Hey there, everyone. How you doing? Hopefully you guys are all having a wonderful day. We're back at it again with another video. This time I am on my main account, Smallexplamp. Also, shout out to the clan chat, Smallexplamp. Forgot to mention, I'll also be streaming on the Need Bonds account if you guys want to check that out after you watch this video. Today we're here with the first iteration of my merching tips and tricks series, where I'll basically, be giving my tips and tricks in regards to merching or flipping in the game. These are going to be aimed a little bit more towards experienced people in the market. You at least have somewhat of an idea of what you're doing. I've made some basic beginner guides for people that want to learn how to do this type of stuff, so if you want to check those out beforehand. I'm not going to say that anything in this video is necessarily out of reach, but I won't be going over some of the more simple stuff that I'll be talking about. So, I've been flipping for a long time. I made a series a while back called Worthless to Wall Street, where I started with 1 GP and worked it up into 50 plus mil. So, today I'm just going to be going through some of my best tips and tricks. If you guys enjoy this though, make sure to let me know so I can do more. Let's go. Tip number 1, buying your own margins. So this is one that I actually employed back in the day to a huge success. It isn't something that necessarily works with everything. Like, you can't just go and do this on every item and expect to make money off of it, but if you can find a certain scenario where it works, it can make you an absolute boatload like it did me. So whenever we buy and sell an item in the Grand Exchange, we get the inherent margin between them. However, there could only be one person buying and selling at each of those two prices, which means if we buy and sell again, we could potentially change the price. A good example of where this didn't work is the Adamant Full Helm T right here, where the price stayed the same both times I bought and sold it. With the Armadillo page 1, as we can see, the first time the margin was 28K, the second time I did it, the margin was 32. Now this isn't great here, however you can get an idea of where this is going to work though. For me personally, back in the day, I made probably about 300 mil in the span of a couple months doing this on all of the Zamrock pages, because this was my thought process then. Keep in mind the buy limit now is 5, it was 10 at the time that I was doing this, and whenever you lower the buy limit like that, it makes it a lot harder to do this type of stuff. But basically, the Zamrock page is a great item for this, because whenever someone's buying a page, they're going to put it in a book that becomes untradeable, and thus they can never really sell it back to the market, meaning that if I buy up the price and make the price artificially a little higher, no one's going to sell it back to me because they see the price go up, because they can't. And the people bringing these pages into the game are just clue scroll people that really are willing to sell it for whatever price someone's willing to buy it for. They don't care either, they just want to get rid of it. So this was a great item because both parties really would be willing to pay more or less depending. And in addition to that, I can't really be hurt in any way. If I make the price go up a few 100K, there's not someone sitting on a lot of these that can sell them back. So this was a great item that I did it for. However, it just depends on where you can make this work. On over at GE Tracker for tip number 2. If you guys want to check them out, they are a sponsor of mine, but I'm just going to be using them to demonstrate some items that I'm talking about. The second tip I have is whenever you're investing into an item, or whenever you're looking for an investment of an item, take into account its high alch price. There are some items recently where I think this is really, really useful. The first example I've talked about before, and that's a bracelet of Ethereum. This is quite special of an investment. I don't think there's a lot of places that replicate this, but it's an item that can be dismantled for Ether. Basically, whenever you dismantle this bracelet, it turns into 250 Ether, which currently is worth about 45K, the exact same price of this bracelet. Now the high alch price whenever you charge this bracelet of Ethereum with 1 Ether, which is just 250 GP, is going to be 44K. Now what that means is that if everything goes bad, the price of Ether drops a ton, you can always high alch these for 45K after you charge them, and at the end of the day you can get out on this investment with no loss, however this happens, whatever the price of Ether is. However, if we look at a yearly scale, Ether had just began to plummet when it came out and slowly has raised over time as the weapons that require Ether have come into the game more. And over time, I would imagine this could actually go over the 175 GP mark that they're kind of bound to by the bracelets. So if it does go over, then you have the potential of dismantling all the bracelets and turning them into Ether. If they don't, you can just high alch it for all your money. And really, there's nothing bad that can happen unless JX artificially changes the price of the high alch, which they haven't done yet, so I wouldn't imagine they do. Now, typically, I wouldn't fear about that. However, one thing I wanted to invest in recently a little bit was this Hydra tail. It was proposed for a Bone Whip update, and basically, that's where all this hype came from. Its high alch value at the time was 900K, so it really wasn't going any lower. They proposed the update, it was going to fail and people could tell, so it went back down. Now at this point, I was like, well, if it's back down to 900K, they'll probably repropose something and it could go back up in the hype again, so why not reinvest? They did mention here, however, that they might be willing to change it, and they did do that. So it's something that can happen. However, I think this is the first real instance where this is a big player. So for the most part, high elk value can help you out a lot when looking for a merch, and definitely consider it when you're looking for an item. So tip number 3 is keep a log. Really, this is one of my biggest tips in regards to whenever you are flipping in old school RuneScape. Keep a log of items that work for you, because even if you have access to a site like GE Tracker where you can sort the items based on their potential flips and see what's good at the time. As we can see up here, there's an API status on GE Tracker. This is because GE Tracker and any site like it, they all take their item prices from the OS Buddy prices. So if OS Buddy prices are messed up, there's nothing that anyone is going to be able to tell you on these items, and thus it's really just a free-for-all. You'll see that the items stagnate and they don't change prices for, hours to maybe a day, depending on how bad it is, but during that time you can actually get amazing flips, because sources like GE Tracker allow people to go to some of the higher margin items, which naturally makes the margins less. Whenever people don't know what to flip on GE Tracker, that's the best time for people that actually have a log of items to be able to do their flips. So if you're new, it might be a little harder if prices go down, but if you're experienced, this is the exact time that you want to be able to flip, as you're going to find some of the best margins that you can get, really. Tip number 4 is going to be a little bit more all-encompassing. It's not necessarily one tip, but it's different ways to approach optimizing your efficiency when you are going about flipping. So the first one is use as many grand exchange slots as you can when you are flipping. I know it's tempting to put in an offer for a max amount of items that you can buy every 4 hours, but instead of doing that, maybe split your money up into 3 or 4 different flips. That way you can actually turn over your money a lot quicker. So that's one. If you also don't plan on being at the Grand Exchange a lot, optimize your flip towards what you're doing. So, for instance, if you're going to go do a Slayer task that takes an hour, maybe don't do a Zora scale flip that you're going to make 2 GP on each Zora scale and make like 60k, because that can be done in a couple seconds. Instead, maybe go for something along the lines of buying 5 Bandos Tacets, or really just something a little bit more low volume that can actually take the entire hour to buy. And then finally, when you're throwing in offers overnight, that is a great time to be able to flip, but you have to do it smart. You can't really go with the same margin that you were doing before. What I recommend is, if you have a margin in mind for an item and you're going to bet overnight, maybe expand that margin out like 2 or 3 times and try to put it out an offer somewhere in there. So if you think you have a 50k margin on an item, if you're going for an overnight flip, try to get 150k on it. Just try to expand upon it a little bit, because if you have an offer in that long, you may as well take advantage of the natural variation in price changes over the entire night. Tip number 5 is, how should you approach volatile items? So in old school RuneScape, with a lot of updates, you'll have items that go up 100, 200% in price just out of pure hype. And that is a crazy time to be able to get on items. While I don't typically recommend investing in hype, the thing you have to understand is, when these items are very volatile, there's no reason that you should be flipping them, because if you flip them for their current margin, rarely is it actually going to be worth it when you consider that, if this item goes up a mil, what's the most you're going to make? You're not going to make a mil, you're going to make that current margin, which was maybe 100k. If this item goes down a mil, you're losing a mil. So you have to succeed a lot to be able to make these items worth it to flip them. So I say, as far as flipping them, just stay away. It's not worth it. If you actually want to get in and profit on these items, it's through investing in them. However, you have to do that with extreme care, because a lot of these items during the hype tend to drop later, but depending on how you diagnose the situation, you can do what you see fit, but flipping them is definitely not the answer. Now, my next tip is investing in boom or bust items, really items that could be brought up to Jax's attention. As we know with old school RuneScape, there's a lot of items that come back in some way and, get repurposed for a different use. So oftentimes what you're going to want to look for are a lot of Slayer type items that may be high end, however don't have a high price point. An example of something like this that happened lately is the Dragon Bone necklace, where for a while it was extremely cheap because there were just so many of them coming into the game. They had some hype for a repurposed use, however it didn't end up really being that useful, and then dropped again. But as we can see, they were 230k for a significant amount of time, and they just were being poured into the game endlessly. And then over the last month, they hit as high as 700k. So, that's the type of stuff that you can get in on. Even if the item doesn't get that good of a use, the pure hype alone will be able to make you a good profit on it. And this was one that was fairly obvious, because it came from a new boss that had no use, and so they feel almost obligated to give it some use. Now, these could get another use again in the future. However, even looking further back, the occult necklace is one that I think could definitely get an upgrade at some point. I know we want magic to be better in the combat triangle, and there's so many of these in the game that it would seem like, you know, maybe a possibility for an upgrade. These have year-round been about 500 to 600k and have gone up a little bit more lately. And I mean, 700k for the best magic necklace in the game seems a little cheap, right? So these are just some examples, but they're definitely ones that I like. Over time, you know, the worst that happens with something like this even is you lose 70k and have to high alch it, or you end up hitting it big. I mean, really, there's not a lot of risk with many of these items because they have such a use in the game that it's hard for them to go down. And if they do go up, they have immeasurable potential. It's definitely one of my favorite ways about going to find some items to invest in. And the final tip of the video is going to be a little bit more all-encompassing, and that is to test out different items, try new flips. I know I said earlier to keep a log of some of your favorite items to flip, and be happy with the log, you know, build that log up, but don't just stick with 5 or 10 items that you know. Try to get as many as you potentially can so you can try all the items that you could possibly know. The bigger the backlog of items that you have, the better you're going to be at flipping, and in addition to that, the more items you try, even if they're a little bit more risky, you know, just having tried different items, you'll be able to gain a lot of knowledge of flipping that even if you lose some money on them, the knowledge that you gain is going to outweigh the overall initial GP cost that it's going to cost you. So don't be afraid to lose any money when flipping. For the most part, it is a way of making money, and at the end of the day, you should come out in the positive. If you're investing though, I'd say if you're going to go on a high risk investment, definitely don't put more than 40% of your bank into one unless you're 100% sure that it's going to go right for you. Bracelets of Ether. But yeah, really don't be afraid to try out new flips just because you're going to lose some money. Once you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of cash, it's only going to get better. That's going to be it for me today. If you guys did enjoy the video, as I said, make sure to leave a like. Let me know in the comments. If you guys want to see more of my videos as soon as they go live, make sure to hit that subscribe. And yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and bye.